We pick up part 2 of economic geography by looking at the tertiary sector. And the tertiary sector is highlighted by specialization. This service sector is where we find jobs that we pay people to do tasks for us. So this sector serves our mass consumption society. Think about the different services that you pay for on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. You might go to one of these shops found in the image on the bottom of the screen to buy your clothes, to buy your over-the-counter medicine, to buy your food, to grab a cup of coffee, to get a carry-out meal. On the top of the screen, we see a luxury resort. That's also part of the service sector. We pay for recreation. We pay for leisure. Within the tertiary sector, we find semi to hired skilled labor. So you could go into your local branch bank and you might work with a bank teller for a simple transaction. You might meet with an office manager in the bank to talk about setting up a savings account or an IRA or a CD, or talk about a loan. These are all different jobs. These are all different occupations found in this tertiary sector. Our final sector is the quaternary sector, and this is known as the knowledge sector. And this is a sector that is also in a broader service sector. But within the knowledge sector, we find decision making. We find research for all the different sectors. So when we look at the farm where chickens are produced, right, we see a primary sector activity. We also see secondary sector activities if we're growing and harvesting corn to feed the chickens. We're looking at tertiary sector activities for the individual who drives the chickens and drops them off at different grocery stores or processing plants. The quaternary sector is the one who's going to research, the one who is going to make decisions for how many chickens to produce and where to send those chickens, which markets are the best fit for that local producer. The quaternary sector includes intellectual activities, and these individuals in the quaternary sector are generally our most highly educated workforce. Some different examples, we looked at the chicken production, or the top individual with research and development, with logistics, would be found in the quaternary sector. We also see it in our upper offices of government. The image on your screen of the Central Intelligence Agency. Research and design throughout different companies, throughout different types of businesses, information technology, investment decisions, health and pharmaceuticals. The employees working in these fields would all be found in this knowledge sector. Again, the sector of the economy that relies heavily on advanced degrees and high skills. We're going to shift gears now from what do we produce and talk about where do we produce. And when we look at economic geography, not only are we studying what's produced in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, but we ask ourselves, why are those products created there? And economic activities in a market economy are going to locate where they can maximize profits. So this idea of cost minimizing is paramount. And what we're finding as multinational corporations become more and more common, as businesses set up operations in different areas to perform different tasks, we're really seeing this spatial division of labor evolve. And the separate stages of operations and production reflect this attempt to minimize costs. Now, there's a couple ways in which companies look to minimize cost. The first is low wage orientation. And this is when work that could be done by a semi-skilled worker, like production, assembly, sewing, this is often found outside of either the country or outside of where the company is headquartered. And when we look at low wage orientation, we're looking at a time when transportation costs are greater than wages. So it would be cheaper for us to assemble cars in Mexico and ship them back in the United States than it would be to assemble the car here in the United States for our domestic market. It's cheaper for us to have our fabric sewn into clothes in Mexico and ship it back into the United States than it would be to hire a factory of seamstresses to produce the clothing here in the US. So this place, a maquiladora, is an assembly plant found just over the border of the United States into Mexico. Now, within the United States, we also have low-wage orientation, where we have what are called back office operations. So a company that might have a downtown office where executives work, they might have a call center, or they might have their accounting office or their billing office out somewhere else away from downtown where it's cheaper to house those workers. So this low-wage orientation comes into play when we start to separate our workforce. Those that are most profitable are going to be located in the areas of high demand, oftentimes cities where rent is very high, where those jobs that are less essential, that are non-executive, that are semi-skilled, we're going to send those somewhere else where wages are less, where rent is less, where we can maximize our profits. And these maquiladoras are becoming very popular. These cities are growing just over the border in Mexico, as we have a workforce there that works for a fraction of the hourly wage that they would make here in the United States. The image on the top right shows you a sewing facility, and then the bottom image shows you where these largest maquiladoras exist. Cities like Tijuana, Mexicali, Ciudad Juarez. These are all what we call border Plex towns, where we have production just over the border because wages are less, environmental and safety laws are less stringent, the demand for higher wages is lower in Mexico. So American companies and multinational companies are able to send their goods to Mexico to be assembled and then shipped back into the United States. This happens with cars, this happens with clothing, this happens with TVs and electronic components. So it's a way in which a company could increase economic development in these border towns while also maximizing profit by not paying high-wage American labor. The second way that we can minimize cost is through agglomerations. And the term agglomeration simply means clustering. And when businesses arrive in agglomerations, they do so for a couple of reasons. The first is what's called a localization benefit. The second is known as an urbanization benefit. The idea of localization focuses on specialized industries. So when a specialized industry, and I want you to think for a moment, think about a city and think about an industry that reflects that city or that comes to mind right away. When you have that specialized industry, you have a number of support networks and businesses that arise. You also have a skilled labor pool and technology spillover. So if you have those close quarters, if your proximity to other similar businesses is high, you're going to have a lot of spillover of people, of technology and ideas, and you're also going to have proximity to support networks. Some examples, Hollywood. So think about producing a movie. What better city than Hollywood in the United States? You have the different support networks from lighting, special effects, to catering crews that come and support the actors and the directors and the producers on set. Baltimore has a very strong medical industry. When we look at Johns Hopkins Hospital and University of Maryland Medical Center, think about the different companies that support these groups, ranging from insurance agencies to healthcare providers to the actual occupations within the hospitals themselves. So this localization means that there are benefits to opening your business and expanding your business where other similar specialized businesses exist. The other type of agglomeration is known as urbanization. And this is cost savings through exposure to large markets, capital, services. So when we find malls, right? Malls, if you open up your store or your kiosk in a mall, the rent might be high, but you're already exposed to consumers that are shopping at other places. So that location is key. You'll find office parks, clusters of offices that pop up next to each other. Now they get to share infrastructure. They get to share different service providers like copying and printing, like housekeeping, different types of accounting firms that might audit the different companies. So they have a lot of these shared resources and services. So by clustering together, while rent might be a little higher, there are other cost savings inherent with that urbanization, with that cluster, that agglomeration. So when we ask ourselves, where do we produce? We look at low cost. So if we could actually shift production elsewhere, you would pursue that with rational economic thought. Sometimes agglomerations, even though the rent is a little higher, makes sense because of some of these inherent benefits, like a specialized industry or just that exposure to a larger market.